Your safety is your responsibility. That's what they claim, and it became obvious when we hiked Angel's Landing.
You're listening to Travel FOMO, a podcast for people self-diagnosed with wanderlust.
Welcome to the Travel FOMO podcast. My name is Hilarie Houghton, and I'm here with my husband and my surprisingly fearless, insane husband who hiked like half of Angel's Landing with me.
Yeah. Fearless as in wasn't willing to do the whole hike.
Yeah, but no, I have been thinking about it so much lately because as we've gotten to this podcast, I've been like thinking about how we went paragliding together and all of the extreme things that we did during gap year. And Angel's Landing, like, you seriously took it to levels that like I didn't even expect you to take it to, because you're not a huge fan of heights.
Yeah, I don't like heights. I'm not a big proponent of being in a place where I could fall to my death.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, you guys, this is the third episode of our new season, the National Park Spree, and so far we have talked about Yosemite and we have talked about Bryce Canyon, and today we are talking about Zion National Park. And in the coming weeks, we are going to go to places like Horseshoe Bend, Arches, Mesa Verde, and the Rockies. So there's still a lot more to look forward to. So in this episode, we're going to talk about hiking Angel's Landing, one of the world's most dangerous hikes.
Yep.
And it is so freaking scary. It's insane.
It is. It legitimately is.
It really is. And then hiking the Narrows through water in this really, really tight slick canyon. And then we'll talk about how crazy hot Zion is.
It is the place of extremes. It's an expansive canyon, 2,000 feet deep.
Yeah.
Like Hilarie said, the Narrows is hiking along its floor. It's only like 20 to 30 feet wide, this little narrow place with water running through it. And there's like this little challenging area known as the subway. And then there's a little river that you can swim in called the Virgin River. Everything is extreme. The hiking, the heights, the views, the heat, the flash floods, the weather, like all of it is extreme. If you want to experience extreme national parks and stuff that you can't get anywhere else and will not be like any of the other hikes and stuff that you've done, Zion is the place you want to go.
It really is. Oh my goodness. Yeah. And when we drove in, we were coming from Bryce Canyon, and you can hear about that in the last episode. And it's really not that far away. But we actually had to drive like all the way around Zion and enter through the opposite side. So we had to enter through the west entrance. And there's a reason behind that. It depends on what you're driving, right? Because we were hauling an RV. Mm-hmm. And so the east entrance really wasn't going to work for us because it's so narrow and the road is so challenging. They actually say that nearly every RV is so large that requires an escort, meaning they shut down the road so that you can pass through it with your rig.
Right.
And you've got to like schedule it and everything. And we were like, yeah, no, it's totally not worth that effort. We'll just drive a few more miles.
Right.
It's fine. And really Zion is small enough that you can drive just a little further to enter from the other side. So it wasn't really that big of a deal, but it kind of gives you like a little bit of the lay of the land.
Well, on our first day, we got up super early to hike, and a lot of the park of Zion, you can't drive the roads. The roads are closed down, and only the shuttles from the park drive along and drop you off at different like trailheads, basically.
Yeah.
So we got up early, got on the shuttle. They dropped us off at the Grotto, is where you want to get off if you're going to hike to Angel's Landing. That's where we were headed. We ended up hiking like 15-20 minutes in the dark. Like it was still dark. Yeah. And, we knew...
We're trying to beat the heat.
Right. We're trying to beat the heat. We knew that Angel's Landing would get busy. Yeah. So we wanted to be some of the first up there.
We had to have a permit too, right?
Right. It was timed entry
Yeah.
for us. And so we knew that we had like a certain window, and we had to do a decent hike to get to the beginning of Angel's Landing. So you hike to Scout's Landing, and then from there you do the Angel's Landing hike. And to get to Scout's Landing, it was like 20 switchbacks, way up, like really up pretty high on this mountain. Yeah. And, when you're like, just to kind of give you an idea, when you're on the shuttle and you look up at the road, you look up from the road up to the mountain, you can see where Scout's Landing is. You can see where Angel's Landing is. You can see it all pretty clearly, but it's so far that you can't see the people.
Yeah. Even on the switchbacks, which they're high, but they're not even as high as Angel's Landing, and you can't even see anything happening. Yeah. It's so far away.
It's quite the trek up there.
Yeah. Do you remember, so when we talk about going up all these switchbacks, I can't not think about that guy that, like, it was this man and his wife and their, like, teenage daughter, and they were hiking, and we were just close enough that we were kind of kept passing each other along the way, and he would stop, but he would never stop unless we did. And so we would stop and take a break, and he would just stop, basically right there. And then as soon as we started walking, he'd follow us. Even if his daughter and wife weren't ready, he would just start walking again. Yeah. And so it started to feel like kind of competitive.
Right.
It was really funny. And like at a certain point, I think we even talked about it because we were like, this guy, what is this guy doing? Why does he care so much?
It's funny how I feel like there are people like that. Like every once in a while on a trail, you run into somebody that's just quirky and funny, and he was definitely one of them.
He was that guy. That was really funny.
I remember when we finally got to like Scout's Landing, and there's a little sign that says like to go past this point you have to have a permit and everything like that, and we started to see like, okay, here are the chains that you that Angel's Landing is known for, that you have to hang on to as you climb up. And we started, and it was intense.
Yeah, it really was.
And like right from the very beginning, you're like, okay, like this is for real. And for me, like I started wondering like, okay, this is the very beginning of it. How much worse is it going to get?
And you can see the mountain, and you can see how you guys have to look up, Google right now, Angel's Landing, Zion National Park.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Right.
And you can see, and so you're climbing this where we are at this point, and you can see how steep it's going to get. It's going to get a lot worse.
Well, and I remember like, you go on the chains for a little bit, and we went through some of that, and then you kind of reach some areas where you're just walking across like the open face of the mountain.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to hang on to. Uh-huh. And that to me was worse. I felt like at least with the chains, like there was something to give you a sense of stability. Uh-huh. And then you walk across that, and you're like, oh man, how are we going to get down from this? Like, we have to go back the same way that we came. And we were there early enough that no one was like coming down yet.
Right. So we weren't competing with a bunch of people.
Right. But you realize like, okay, when I'm going down, there's going to be a bunch of people on this trail. Mm-hmm. And this trail's not big enough for me by myself. Like, what's it going to be like with other people on it? And we got to one point, and I decided, what do you think? Was it like a fourth of the way, a third of the way?
A fourth of the way?
Yeah, maybe like 25% of the way. And there's kind of like a little landing where you get to stand and take your breath. And there's a few people standing, and, you're kind of waiting to see like, okay, what are we going to do? And that was where I made the decision that I had gone as far as I was going to go.
Yeah. And it had been hard to get there.
Yeah, it had been hard to get there, and I was just like, I'm done. I'm not going to go. And if you want to know exactly how the conversation went, you can go out to our YouTube channel and watch our episode that we put out on Zion. and there's audio because Hillary was wearing a GoPro.
That's right.
And it was running.
Mm-hmm.
And so the conversation was captured for your enjoyment.
Yeah. Like, exactly, are we really willing to do this?
I think I'd rather watch people. You have to come back the same way, right? I cannot believe they let people do this.
To your point, you had talked about like the spaces that you have to, you walk and there's no cables or chains or anything for you to hold on to. And it's just this open rock, but it's, in some cases it's like 5 feet wide. Like it's not very wide. It's crazy windy because you are up at the top of the world pretty much. And
Right.
The wind is just so intense. So there's that. And then the thing that blows my mind is that people are allowed to hike this at various times of year. And one of them is like during a time when there could be ice. And I cannot imagine trying to walk across some of this with ice on the rock. Like
No.
it's such a bad idea.
Yeah, no, there's no way. There's no way.
It's crazy because there were so many times that I remember telling you, I was like, I can't believe they allow people to do this hike.
Yeah.
It actually feels like they shouldn't allow people up here.
Right.
But I guess you're doing it at your own risk. So
That's true, and you have to get a permit to do it, and it's a decent hike to get up to it. So I feel like you probably eliminate a lot of people by just having to get to the base of it.
That's true.
But it's intense. But when I decided to go back, you decided to press on.
I did. But standing there thinking about it was probably the hardest part. It was the possibilities running through your head are kind of scary. And I want to be really clear about something. I am a thrill seeker. I love this kind of stuff. Like, it's my mom's side of the family. That is what we do. We like we would go snow skiing, and my uncles would be doing all the ramps and all the things you can imagine to try to like do stunts and stuff. Like, it was always about like doing something crazy. And I like that. And I still was just like, I don't know. I just didn't know if it was a good idea. And I didn't have like this confidence that everything was going to be okay. Sometimes I do exciting things and I'm like, it'll be fine. But this was one I was like, I don't know that this is going to end well. And so, yeah, you decided to stay back. The only reason that I ended up going was because we were talking to a young couple that had just been married. I think they were on their honeymoon. COVID had happened, and I think they had to delay their honeymoon. But so I think they were taking their honeymoon, and they did Angel's Landing with me. So thanks to Jamie and Rod for letting me tag along on your honeymoon. And they were so sweet because they were like, "Are you okay? Doing okay? You got it? You good? Yeah, you got it." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, they must think I'm like 55." But and there's probably a lot of 55-year-olds out there who did Angel's Landing a lot better than I did. But yeah, it was just, they were really great though. And it was just encouraging to have somebody else around. And then I just have to say it was the scariest thing I'd ever done. Truly.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd been paragliding in the Swiss Alps. Pretty scary. Definitely not this scary. We had been hiking in bear country for years, it felt like, and this was far scarier. And we did that drive in the last episode in Yosemite. We did this drive on Highway 120 that like almost made me black out because I was so scared.
I was going to say, like, you describe, if you go back and listen to that episode, our Yosemite episode, episode 1 of season 10, you say that you almost pass out.
It's true.
But this was scarier.
Yeah.
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 I feel like it's such a prolonged period of being scared too. Because I feel like with paragliding, like the initial like, okay, we're going to like kind of jog a little bit off the face of this mountain is like, it's scary, but it's scary for like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And then you kind of take off and you
realize you're fine.
Right. Your pilot has you and you're like, oh, I'm just sitting here now.
Yeah.
And I feel like this was like, I don't know how you did it.
It was the thing that was different about the drive that you mentioned where I almost passed out.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't in control. So like it felt like my life was flashing before my eyes in this one split second. But in this, I did feel like I was more in control, but you just didn't have the luxury of blacking out. Truly. Yeah, it was a lot. And honestly, once I did get to the top, I couldn't even hang out there. There were people that were just kind of hanging out. You see pictures of people like dangling over the edge with letting their legs dangle over the edge. And I was like, I could not do that. I can't remember what type of animal was up there. I think it was like little squirrels that were like running around, and they were very used to humans being up there and feeding them snacks.
Oh, gotcha.
And so they were like getting up in our faces. But yeah, man, it was really scary. But I will say I learned some good advice along the way. I was like pretty freaked out, and somebody said, okay, always have 3 points of contact at all times. That's the way to go on this. It's too dangerous not to. So you're always going to have 2 hands and 1 foot always touching the mountain. And if you think about it like that, one, it's something to think about, which is good when your brain is kind of like going crazy. And it's really good advice, honestly, to just always be touching in every way that you can and only move 1 foot at a time. It just makes a lot of sense. So anyway, I just want to share that if anybody's thinking about doing that hike or something like that. It's pretty legit advice, like just to like do it that way.
So would you recommend Angel's Landing?
Honestly, I don't think so, because I cannot reiterate how much I kept thinking people should not be doing this.
I remember being surprised that they let people do it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have read some stories about people who have hiked Angel's Landing and some of the stories of people who have died. I will say too, like along the way, I saw different families, like people with like younger kids, and that freaked me out because younger kids just don't know their limits. And honestly, I will say teenage boys might be the scariest audience for something like this because they're brave and they don't know their limits, and they're a little clumsy sometimes. Yeah. I feel like any young teenager or preteen, they're just a little clumsy. They just don't exactly, they're growing so fast their body can't keep up with them, and their brain can't keep up with their body kind of.
Right.
And I think that's like where you see like some accidents happen. And I've heard of some young teenagers, and I mean, literally on either side of you, in multiple instances, you have no chain to hold on to. You have nothing. You could crawl on all fours maybe, but for the most part, you can just walk across this open rock that's 3 to 5 feet wide. And on either side of you, you will die. There's no other option, like in all reasonability, no other reasonable possibility that you could survive. Because again, when you were talking about this canyon, Zion Canyon, it is 2,000 feet tall, and you're at the top of it now.
Yeah.
So you basically have a 2,000 foot drop, and it's hard enough to get out your phone and take a photo.
Yeah.
It really does like kind of throw you off to even do something like that. And so a lot of our footage is of us using a GoPro, and then a couple times we took some footage on the phone, but not much because it was so freaking scary.
It's crazy you say that about like teenage boys, because I remember when I went back down, I went down to Scouts Landing, which is kind of like a big area, and a lot of people congregate to kind of work up their nerve before they do Angel's Landing. And then there's a lot of people like me who wait on their crazy other half to like complete the hike. And I remember a family coming through, and it was like mom, dad, and 2 boys. And they were probably like 9 and 11.
Oh,
and
gosh.
I must have heard that lady say Samuel's name a million times.
Oh, my gosh.
Because she was like, Samuel, now you have to stay close to me. Samuel, you get right here. And Samuel, go right there. Samuel, grab a hold of it. They started up it. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
I think they ended up coming back before you did. So I don't know how far they actually made it.
They may have made it to the point that you did. And then you turned back around.
Yeah.
Remember? So maybe, because there's a spot where it's like, okay, you can see the rest of the hike ahead and you can decide, am I going to turn around now or I'm going to.
Yeah. I imagine that's probably what they did. But it
literally made me like put my hand on my forehead and like physically react whenever you told me that. So I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds like such a bad idea. Okay, real quick though, we need to give a shout out to my cousin Ashley and Carl, the Pipkins.
Yep.
Because they have done this hike and they're the reason that we really know about it, honestly. Because Ashley had done it.
I think we originally heard about it from them, yeah.
Yeah, and Ashley and Carl had both done it and told us all about it. It was super windy the day that they did it. And that was the real big concern is like, is it safe enough to do it and not get blown off the mountain? Literally.
Yeah.
Literally. Especially in those places where you don't have anything to hold on to. Like, that's pretty scary. So, but they did it and inspired us to as well. It's crazy.
Way to go, guys.
Way to go.
Well, if Angel's Landing isn't your speed and like climbing up is not what you want to do, there's another crazy unique hike that you can do in Zion that I think probably even more people do, and that is the Narrows. So you do not need a permit to hike the Narrows like you do Angel's Landing, but you do want to check in with the Park Service, particularly if you go in the late summer, early fall, which is when we were there during monsoon season, because flash floods can happen, and they can happen very quickly, and they don't even have to happen like right where you are. They can happen upstream, like a storm can happen up there and a flash flood come through. In fact, just a few days before we came to Zion, when we were in Bryce, we read the story of a girl who was hiking the Narrows, and a flash flood came and washed her away, and she died. And they ended up finding her several miles down the river.
So sad.
Yeah, just crazy. And so you have to like kind of beware of what's going on. But it's a crazy hike because you're going through this canyon, and most of the hike you're in water. And like ankle to knee deep water. So you want to be aware of the shoes that you have on. For us, we hiked in like Teva kind of sports sandals, which was fine, but it was really cold. There are a lot of places around Zion where you can rent actual boots, and they make like a special boot for hiking through water, and they'll like also rent you little hiking sticks. If you don't want to do that, there at the beginning of the hike, there are a ton of like sticks just lined up along the wall, like actual sticks that you can use to kind of help gain your footing, because you are hiking through this water, and it's a rock bed, so it's very rocky, and the water is moving really fast, and you can't see through it. So each step you take, you're sort of taking this like exploratory, like find footing for my next step kind of like cadence that you get into through the Narrows. But such a cool hike. So much fun. Do you remember we saw a couple taking like engagement photos or like wedding photos?
Yeah, that
back
was really
in there.
neat.
Like they had hiked in with all their stuff in backpacks, like 2 miles into the Narrows, and changed clothes. She was in her dress and he was in his suit, and they were taking pictures in there. I remember thinking that was really cool.
That's so cool. I just can't get over how the flash flood piece of it To kind of go back to something you were talking about that is worth reiterating is these flash floods are just pretty insane. And the idea that like you think it's a nice sunny day outside, but once you get in this canyon, you can only see a small sliver of the sky.
Yeah.
And this canyon, doesn't it at some point, I could be wrong, but I feel like at some point it gets like a mile tall or something crazy.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy high and crazy narrow in there.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but it's so tall and so narrow that you barely see the sky, much less the sun. So you just really don't know what the weather's like. And even if you're standing outside at the top, it wouldn't matter what's happening around you in terms of the weather because all of those storms could happen miles and miles away. And it just doesn't matter. They will flush because the canyon is so narrow. All that water from miles and miles away will just come very quickly and it'll just increase so fast. I just think that's really fascinating. And then on top of that, you don't have cell phone reception, so you can't check the weather.
Yeah.
Even if you wanted to at any point in the park. And that's fascinating. It's just a perfect storm to kind of get yourself in a bad situation. So it's so good to check with the park and know what they advise.
Yeah, you definitely want to be really careful and just careful of the water in general. There's bacteria in the water, so you do not want to swim in the Narrows. You definitely don't want to drink the water. And they even recommend not getting it on your hands or your face. So be very careful of the water that you're hiking through all through the Narrows. And I remember thinking like, well, I don't know if you actually have to be in the water the whole time, but you do. Like there are little sections where you might get out of the water for a minute on the trail here and there, but probably a good 75% of the time, there's no other option than like hiking in the water.
Yeah, and possibly more so the deeper you get in, the further you go, the more water maybe.
And we went 3 miles in? Like we went 3.25 in and then back out. You can definitely go much further. Yeah. We just didn't have the time, and we didn't rent the boots, and so in our Tivas, it was
toes were feeling it.
Yeah, it was fine, but we were getting cold, and it just takes a long time.
Yeah.
Because it's not like walking on pavement where you're like, 15-20 minutes I can make it a mile. No, you're going much slower, trudging through water, trying to find your footing, and so it takes a long time to hike it. But it's such a cool hike, so different than anything else that you see in other national parks.
Yeah.
You know, when you go on that hike, it's definitely a total different experience.
Yeah, and it's worth looking up too. So look up, Google the Narrows Zion National Park, because you will see some photos of what we're talking about, or better yet, go check out the YouTube video. I looked Jamin in the eye and I knew he was like, what are you saying?
Yeah, you could pitch our stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Pitch our YouTube. But yeah, it's just really unique experience. There's no other way to put it. It's a very unique experience and totally worth doing. And I would imagine it was very busy when we went. And I imagine as it gets more and more into the afternoon, it gets even busier. But that's a great time because it's hot. Yeah. And the hotter it gets, the more you'd appreciate that cold water that you're walking in. So
it was definitely a nice reprieve, because it was so hot there. But on that hike, you're completely comfortable because you're in that water.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I remember I wasn't completely comfortable because I was still a little stressed.
You had residuals?
I literally was still shaken up by Angel's Landing the day before. And I remember after the hike, after Angel's Landing, I actually jumped, my body kind of jerked several times, as if I was falling off the edge of a cliff. I would have these do you remember?
I do. I remember we were because the first part of the Narrows is paved. As you're getting to the river, from where the bus drops you off. And I remember you doing a little trip step in the middle of this sidewalk. And I was like, "Are you okay?" And you're like, "I felt like I was falling."
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, it's gonna be a long day."
I know. I felt like I couldn't balance myself. I don't know. I was still like, I think I was still in fight or flight mode. Like I was still hopped up from Angel's Landing and felt like I might die. Like it's so crazy. It's so intense. It's hard. It's really hard to explain. It's just a lot.
It not to be outdone by all the other extremes in Zion, the weather there was pretty crazy. It was hot.
So hot. Oh my gosh.
I remember we actually got a campsite inside the park. So if you've been listening, you know, a lot of times we've had to stay outside the park at RV parks and things like that. National parks, just a lot of times they don't have full hookups, things like that. But we were able to get electric and water there at Zion, actually in the park. Really cool campground. Beautiful.
Incredible views.
Yeah. Everywhere you look, just incredible. But it was so hot, and our air conditioning unit just could not keep up.
Yeah.
So the middle of the day, we were like, we need to get Maggie out of the trailer, and we can't stand in here either. So we're going to go see what we can do. And we went into the little city there, and we went to a coffee shop and then a brewery. Fortunately, the cold beer was able to help keep us cool. We were able to get away from some of that extremity.
Yeah, and you know the great thing too is that Zion, all the businesses there, they get it. They know it's hot there. So everywhere you go, there are misters, there's shade, but it's still like dicey. Like it's still really hot. Still hot. And I remember the night before Maggie had thrown up. Do you remember? And we thought that it was because she was hot.
Yeah, I think it was the heat.
So that tells you like how hot it was, even though we had an air conditioner, and our like air conditioner. It was the original AC in our 1997 Excel Airstream, so we'll just be clear about that. And these Airstreams are like little tin cans, you know, so they're like absorbing all this heat during the day. And I remember we would put up like all kinds of like towels and blankets and things over the windows in addition to the curtains, and like what do you call like the little shades that you put in your sun visors that you put in your windshield?
Well, we didn't have those yet.
Oh, we didn't have those yet? We hadn't stepped up. So it was really hot.
Yep, you need to tune in to Horseshoe Bend to hear all about how we got those.
Right. Wow, that's right. Horseshoe Bend is where we really...
That's where we really fought the heat.
Oh, man, that was bad. It's coming up, guys.
Coming up. Tune in.
It's going to be great. Oh, my gosh. I do want to say, like most national parks, there's not a lot of dog-friendly stuff, but there was one dog-friendly trail here, and we went for a run with Maggie there. I think it's called the Paris Trail, and it's right off of the campground. It's in this really main area that's really obvious, and that was really nice. And I will say in the mornings it's great. Like the weather's nice in the mornings.
Yeah, once the sun kind of goes down in the evenings, like I remember us sitting out by the fire, and like it was cool enough that we wanted to build a fire. Like it was nice. And the mornings were great, and it's just the afternoon it really heats up.
Yeah. Do you remember the stars at night?
Yeah, crazy.
I just remember being like, whoa, this is so much. Fast forward a little bit, guys. We will do an episode eventually on Joshua Tree. And Joshua Tree was better. But this was like the second best, in my opinion. The second best maybe ever of where I've been able to see the most amount of stars. It was really awesome.
I remember it being kind of crazy because you would look up and you're in this canyon. So there's sort of this strip of stars because there's walls on either side of you that are just black at night because it's the canyon walls. And so you just see this like strip of stars, which is not anything that I had ever seen before. But I really thought that was cool there.
Yeah. That's awesome. So what's up next?
Well, as we said, we're about to go out of the frying pan and into the fire as we head to the Horseshoe Bend area. We actually camp in campgrounds around Lake Powell. So we're excited to tell you all about that. Antelope Canyon is in that area, and we've got some things to say about Antelope Canyon and whether or not we were able to make it into Antelope Canyon. But that northern part of Arizona, not far at all from Zion, is where we are headed next.
That's right. And you guys can go out to our YouTube channel to watch some of the video on all of Zion National Park, including that freaky Angel's Landing trail. It's so crazy. I can't say enough about it. And and then you can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We are out there putting some stuff out there. And then also we have an email address. You can reach us at travelfomopodcast@gmail.com and share a little story or something.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. I know a lot of people visit Zion on trips to Vegas.
That's right.
Which I think would be so different. I would love for somebody to like send us a note on that. Maybe record a voice memo and send it to us so we can play it on the podcast for everybody, or just send us kind of your story. But I would love to know what it's like to like wake up in Vegas, go to Zion National Park, and then go back to Vegas. I feel like that would be such a juxtaposition and so crazy.
Two totally different trips.
Yeah. So if you've done that, drop us a line. We'd love to hear about it. travelfomopodcast@gmail.com.
That's right. You guys keep traveling. We got some fun plans ahead that we're gonna do. We're just always trying to put like some stuff on the calendar to like keep life interesting.
Keep them booked. Keep that trip booked.
Yes, exactly. So here in real time, we've got some stuff going on that we can't wait to see. St. Pete, Florida for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
We are headed back to Jamaica with some friends, Matt and Shay. We are going to Orange Beach with our friends, the Nelsons.
Yep.
We are going to go to Panama City with my family. And then you said you really wanted to take me back to Europe this year.
No. You chose sand over everything else this year.
We chose a lot of beach vacation this year. Looking forward to doing that. And we do share all of those things that we're doing in real time. We share those with you guys on social media. So be sure to check it out. And don't forget that life is short.
Wander well.